What's happening? Welcome to the 77th episode of the Slapstream. We're getting closer and closer and closer every Saturday to the 100th episode, which is my goal for now. I might go a little more than that or a little less than that. Who knows? You know, these days sometimes I have to skip some Saturdays because I became ridiculously busy and it's becoming harder and harder to do this. But I kind of feel that I have to, since I started like all these great bass players that I would like to feature. So I don't know why I'm doing this to myself, but I keep carrying that slap bass torch. Somebody wants to take it from me, wants to help out, please reach out to me. You can do through all these links in the description of this video or contact@artofslapbass.com. If you want to see Tiger Army on tour, we have lots of shows this month. So we're going to be in Atlanta, St. Augustine, Maryland Heights, Minneapolis, Chicago, Rochester Hills, Cleveland, Raleigh, Washington, Philadelphia, Columbus, Pittsburgh, New Haven, New York, Boston, Lewiston, New York, and Ashbury Park, New York. So I'm pretty excited about all of this, and I'm pretty excited to see all of you that are going to come to these shows. It's always fun to play Tiger Army, and it's a pleasure to be back on the road after never-ending pandemic. But I guess it's ending, so that's cool. All right, so I don't want to talk too much before I feature my guest for today. But I would like to remind you, make sure to click that subscribe button and do it now if you haven't done that before. That really helps out with the algorithm, and which is the most important. It brings slap bass, upright slap bass. I don't know how to say it. It's putting up in the YouTube map or something. So please subscribe. Please click slap that like button and share these videos so other bass players and other people that appreciate art of slap bass can see all these amazing artists that usually don't have a chance to be presented in any other media, which is the reason why I created Slapstream. So there you go, 77th episode. If you'd like to support my work and if you'd like to support Slapstream, please check out PayPal and Venmo links in the description of this video. And the best way, absolute best way, is to sign up for a Patreon, since I'm offering a bunch of cool perks, and all these links are also in the description of the video. Make sure to subscribe, as I said, and make sure to follow me, follow my guest, follow all my guests, and follow Art of Slap Bass, the most important. Those links are in the description of this video. And today I dig out my red Art of Slap Bass t-shirt. Not sure if you can see it. I'm in a hotel, that's how my life is. All right, that's a red Art of Slap Bass logo t-shirt. So the link for that is also in the description of this video. So make sure to wave the Art of Slap Bass flag t-shirt in your town. All right, without further ado, I would like to introduce my friend and my guest of the 77th episode, and that's ZACK SAPUNOR. What's happening, buddy?
Hey, what's happening?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here, Djordje.
I'm happy that you are here. It's been like years since I saw you, right? When was the last time?
Yeah, well, like I mentioned earlier, I ran into you on a train once in San Francisco, but, I took a lesson with you. That must have been straight up 15 years ago.
At least, yeah, at least. I have not been living in San Francisco. I think I moved out in 2008 and I moved out to LA, but something like that. So it had to be, before that. So,
well, I have this since last time.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. Time flies, but I'm glad you're still playing the bass, still slapping the bass, and then you did all these great stuff that you did in the meantime. So we're going to be talking about that. I would like to feature all the aspects of your career. So let's start with the beginning. I would like to know, how did you get interested in bass? How did you get interested in music? How did you choose to play bass? How did you discover slap bass and all these fun, great things?
Yeah. Wow. Well, I've been incredibly fortunate as far as just, having surroundings that led me to music in an accessible way. My dad always has had a fantastic record collection of all kinds of different genres. And, to this day, he still kind of keeps his ear to the streets and buys newer things where, up to a point I started digging primarily back in time, which he's hip to as well. But and then I worked in a couple record stores with some really knowledgeable cats. So just hearing recordings all through my life has been a great thing. But as far as creating music, when I was a little kid in the 80s, rap was the coolest music. So I used to get together with my friends and write our own little raps, which were terrible, absolutely terrible. And then I kind of got into rock and roll and punk rock, which was very fortuitous. That was the music that really was speaking to me as a teenager. And, it's for bass, you can do some amazing things. Like, I started on bass guitar. So someone like Matt Freeman from Rancid, is absolute virtuoso punk rock bass. But you can also just, play 3 notes and make your way through a whole Ramones song with 3 notes. So it was very advantageous that the stuff that I really wanted to play could be played fairly simply if you just focus on playing in time, and know what those 3 notes are. My first band, we were all just learning as we were playing. I've heard punk rock called 3 chords and a bad attitude. We were like 2 chords and a bad attitude. So that's kind of how I got started there. And then I got into older music and had to get an upright. So I borrowed one from the school jazz band. I wasn't in the jazz band, but they could tell I was all about music. I'd come and sit in with them before school early in the morning. And so they let me take one home that wasn't being used. And then I started slapping away.
That's great. So you basically came from, I guess, hip hop, then punk, and then the stuff that, rockabilly and country.
Yeah.
Is that what you were talking about when you say like old stuff, or like more old jazz?
I'm trying to get the memories in a timeline here. It really kind of a lot of things were on my radar around the same time. You could trace it like the Ramones. Usually on each album, they would have at least one kind of throwback, like an oldie tune, Do You Want to Dance or California Sun or something like that. And then there was the Cramps, which were punk rock, but were definitely on the rockabilly side. So I was actually sang lead in a Cramps cover band in high school. Didn't play bass, just got on the stage and freaked out with the microphone. Fun times. But but there was also some other influences. I remember being really into Sacramento had an amazing ska scene with some great local artists who were very traditional minded. And they were friends with a bunch of people from out of town. So these great touring bands would come through, and you'd get some of like the third wave ska punk, but you'd also get some like traditional Jamaican influenced, dance music that was a great thing. And the swing thing was blowing up, and I was already into rockabilly. So I, had my Benny Goodman CDs. And then actually Sacramento had, for a time, it was actually the largest jazz festival in the world. It was the Sacramento Jazz Jubilee, or Dixieland Jazz Jubilee. They changed the name a couple times, but that was just kind of a part of, growing up in Sacramento. That music was around every summer. This thing would happen, and there'd be bands with, basses and tubas and trumpets, and you walk around, and a lot of the shows were free, or you could kind of hear through a fence type of thing. Just, you know, walking around downtown, bored teenager.
That's the best. That's the way. That's the way to do it. I feel that, you know, and that kids need to have the access to live music, and then once they do, they actually get more involved and interested. Tell me more. How do you discover upright bass? How did you decided to become an upright bass player?
Well, definitely once I got into rockabilly, I was already an electric bass player, which was pure happenstance. My friends in 8th grade, one wanted to play guitar, one wanted to play drums, and I was like, well, I want to be in a band, so maybe I should play bass. So I mentioned that to my dad, and he was like, well, you know, both of your uncles are bass players. I had no idea. So my uncle Pete took us out to the music store, and I had some saved up allowance, and they helped out too, and got my first bass guitar, which I was really into. But then, you know, as I got into this older music, it was just like upright is the thing, and slap. So I started right away, just, you know, slap is the style I want to play. And I'd see bands on tour that would come through, and I would, you know, watch them, and, you know, just started figuring it out one slap at a time.
How old were you back then?
I started playing upright when I was 17.
Okay.
And so I had already had like 4 years on electric.
Okay, nice. All right, so since I'm not sure how, you know, my viewers, the viewers of the Slapstream are familiar with your playing, why don't you play something and
All right.
let me know what you're gonna play?
Hold on, let's get this set up here.
All right.
All right. Does that look okay?
Sure. It's on you. I would prefer if you put the camera a little bit lower so we can see your right hand, though.
Oh, yeah, you're going to want that, huh? There we go. Okay, so I would say my favorite artist, period, of all time is James Brown. So I've played along to a lot of great slap bass players, but another thing I like to do is play on to music that doesn't have slap bass. And I won't necessarily try to copy the bass line, though that works too. But I'll just kind of improvise with the various rhythms. This is actually my interpretation of a drum beat. It's the famous The Funky Drummer drum break, which is one of the most sampled drum breaks in history, like maybe the second most, I think. Anyway, yeah, here it goes. So it's like a couple double slaps, a quintuple slap, a triplet, and a quad.
All right. It sounds great. Yeah, we can talk a little bit. We can actually talk a little bit about that right now. So I would like to have like a lesson section with you. I don't have my bass with me, unfortunately, but do you mind like breaking down that pattern a little bit? Like tell the notes and what kind of slaps you're using and then all that stuff.
So I started with just a 1 2 1 2. And then I jump up an octave and do, it's a quintuple. So it's like a 1, 2, 3, 4. That's kind of a quad I like. 1, 2. I use the tip of my pinky for that. Kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, and then just one more at the end. So it's like a quad with a just tap tap at the end. And then a 1, 2, 3, and a 1, 2, 3, 4 after that. A triple and a quad. And then you can kind of improvise over that with mixing up different number slaps.
Sounds great. And just like, so which key are you playing?
D.
D. Okay. So the notes that you're playing are D and then octave and what else?
Yeah, just those two for the main leg.
Oh, okay, for the main link, and then you combine other stuff. Cool, great. And just to make sure, like when you talk about quadruple slap, it's those are all 8 notes, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, quadruple meaning pull, slap, slap, slap. So you got the pull.
Yeah. But we were talking about like which we were. So remind. I don't have my bass with me, so but what I had in my head, like all of these are 8 notes, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so can you just repeat the pattern that you're using? I mean, with your explaining, not just playing.
So we have double slap, quintuple slap, triple slap,
okay,
quad slap.
Okay, got it. All right. So as I said, like so, eight notes. That quintuple. How do you pronounce it? Quintuple. How do you say it? Quintuple. Okay. So, but they are like 8 notes. So just like to make sure that we're not doing whatever that's called in. Oh man, you know, I studied music in Europe, so you know some of the terms I still know from Europe. How do you say quintola? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
So if it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, so you have 5 on each quarter note.
Oh, okay.
How do you call that pattern? I mean, you can go that over 2 quarter notes or 3 or whatever.
I don't know what you would call that.
Okay, all right. So if you were doing those quintuple slaps over each quarter note, no. Do you know how they call it? Yeah, I don't know the word in English. I might Google it while you're talking next. And but great, you know, I like the use of quintuple slap as in this case as an 8 notes. Cool, great. So do you want to sit down so we can continue? Yeah. Thanks a lot for demonstrating that lick. I think it's really cool.
Oh yeah, for sure. I had some Red Bull. I'm a little jittery.
Already. Yeah, it's yeah, Red Bull can do that to you. I was never big on Red Bull, but yeah, it's, I guess if you need extra caffeine, it's good. Tell me about your first bands, and then were they rockabilly when you started playing upright? The rockabilly or?
Oh yeah, I was in a band that was kind of, we call it kind of punkabilly. It wasn't really psychobilly. It was like kind of a punk rock rockabilly hybrid.
So now we're talking about 2000s, right?
No, this was still in my teenage years. This would be probably in '96. I started the band, and then '97 I borrowed an upright and so I switched from electric to upright in that band.
Okay. Were you so 2000? Okay, so 96, 97. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Were you aware of the scene, like, you know, around Tiger Army and all of that already, or not?
I think I saw Tiger Army around then.
Back in those days.
Yeah, they were like, I think on a bill with somebody else. I don't know if it was a Reverend show or I think it was at the El Dorado Saloon. Rest in peace.
Oh wow! All right, it's been a while like that. From that period. Let me know. Tell me about your bands and like your first bands, and then how did that go?
Oh, it was great. Like I said, the first group I played in, we kind of got our instruments before we knew how to play them, of course. Or we really kind of formed the band before we even had our instruments. So we got the instruments and then started learning a bit at a time. And that was kind of punk rock, a little bit of surf, maybe some pop punk, and then I really got into older music. So I started another band that I kind of sang lead vocal on, and that's the one that we were called the Shaken Shadows, and I switched to upright bass with that band, and that was great. I was still in high school. Did the Projectiles, which was the Cramps cover band. And that was all kind of teenage stuff. And then I was born in 1980, so in my 20s, that was during the 2000s. And then I got into some other bands that were more serious, Tip Top Trio. We did fairly traditional rockabilly, string band rockabilly, kind of Elvis Sun Sessions modeled, with some quirky songwriting. But that was great. We would practice 4 times a week for a while and just, get those tempos up. And that was huge to kind of just keep me in the slapping game, have a reason to do it besides just practicing. A project with guys that were just all about, old school rockabilly. So that was fantastic. And then I still played with a punk rock group called The Walking Dead. This is before the television show. And that was electric bass. And let's see. There's some other bands in there. A lot of bands. I've always loved playing with different people and different projects and the variety,
How often do you play bass guitar these days?
Not too often, although I did a surf gig within the last year with my buddy Jamie. Happy birthday, Jamie. He's got a group around town called Rent Party that does kind of swingy type of stuff. Plays with some of the great Austin folks. Jamie's a guitar player, but he has a surf side project that we kind of did an opening session with, and that was fun. Some kind of Ventures-y type of surf covers of swing tunes.
And you mentioned that here in Austin, but before that, you were talking about Sacramento. So you're originally from Sacramento, right?
Yeah, I was born in Seattle, but I was raised in Sac.
Ah, okay. And then you moved down to San Francisco. Then,
I went to school.
What was the journey?
And I worked at Amoeba Records there. I had already worked at the original Tower Records location in Sacramento. So then I got to work at Amoeba in San Francisco. And that was crazy time.
The one on Haight Street?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I remember when I moved to San Francisco, I was going to Amoeba literally every day. It was a blast. They had like a huge rockabilly, psychobilly, country section. I was browsing those records all the time.
Yeah.
It was just great going there, see bands, And a few years ago with Tiger Army, we went and we haven't played there, but we did sign records, I think. Yeah, I know we signed records, but we did that, but I don't think we played there. And there was on that one, it was kind of great. Like, wow, okay. So a few years before, I was like coming here all the time, but at that time I already lived in Los Angeles, so it was not around the corner for me because I kind of lived in that area. All right, so back to you. Sacramento, San Francisco, and then you came you were moving back and forth like to Texas, and tell me like what brought you there, and then what brought you back, and like
Yeah.
lots of moves in your career.
Right. Yeah. After I graduated in San Francisco, I moved back to Sacramento and started playing with an old friend of mine who I actually knew from a high school guitar class we had together. And this was back in the days where alternative rock ruled. And so we kind of hung out with alternative kids, but he was the metalhead and I was the punker. So we kind of had an uneasy alliance of opposite extremes of the hard rock side of things. Anyway, with metal, he really researched and practiced his technique and ended up going to Berklee School of Music. This is my buddy Tyson Graff, and he's still a cat who just practices for hours and hours every single day of his life, really inspiring. So I started a duo with him when I moved back to Sacramento called The Afterlife. We did what we called bebop swing. Similar to our punk metal divide, we had like a swing versus modern jazz divide. So we'd kind of meet in the middle and, maybe do some kind of sophisticated Duke Ellington tunes. But, I'd get him to play some trad stuff like Dinah, and he would make me learn Charlie Parker tunes. So it was really great. We practiced with the metronome all the time. We lived right near each other and we're good friends. So just practicing and playing. And then we got a gig opening up for Wayne Hancock, who was a great hero of mine and has, had a lot of bass heroes in his band. So we opened up for him one Halloween in Auburn, California. And he happened to catch our set and seemed to like it. After the show, I said, Wayne, I'm a big fan, and if you ever need a bass player, here's my phone number. So he gave me a call a couple months after that and asked if I wanted to come out on the road, and I did. That was the dream. So I moved to Austin to join the Wayne Hancock band.
Nice. And how long were you with Wayne?
A little over a year. We did the his album Ride together, which I'm still very proud of, with some great players, Texaco and Eddie Rivers, and Jarko Jean was on that, and Eddie Beeble, and me and Wayne the Train. Yeah, very proud of that, and would have stayed with him, but I went to San Antonio to see the Jim Cullum Jazz Band. I knew them from growing up. They had a 25-year national syndicated National Public Radio jazz show every week on Sunday.
This is such a great band.
Yeah. These were, older swing and trad masters. Jim has recently passed on, as has the great John Sheridan on piano, who I got to play with. But I went to see him, and he didn't have a bass player. He's playing a, fancy restaurant gig. And so he was talking to me and my gal, and I kind of jokingly said, do you need a bass player? I'd never been in a trad band before. I'd been in a couple of trad jams. Well, I did have one kind of short-lived project where we did like trad versions of Velvet Underground tunes or just random kind of stuff like that, and some trad stuff. But really, I was not qualified, I felt. But at the time, Wayne was between booking agents, so I had a bunch of downtime. I was new in Austin. I didn't know that many people, and I was just one of the most fruitful times of my life. I was just practicing my tail off, and working on different slap things, and really inspired. And so that happened to be right at that time. And just talking music with Jim, he was like, well, why don't you come down and bring your bass and do a gig with us. And, if the subtext was, if you suck, then we'll just have you sit down after a couple tunes. But if you're good, we do need a bass player.
Nice. Did they have charts and stuff? How did that first thing go?
Bro, they don't have nothing. They don't have a set list. They don't have a list of tunes you're supposed to learn. I would be lucky if I would hear the key of the tune. So sometimes like they discuss amongst themselves and count it off. I'm like, what song, what key? So yeah, he offered me the gig, and at first I turned him down because I felt great loyalty to Wayne the Train. But Jim was always a great salesman. Anybody could tell you that, and he kind of pitched it to me as a learning opportunity that like you couldn't even get at a university. Like universities will have a lot of modern jazz programs, but the kind of hands-on learning for traditional classic jazz, it was it lived up to its billing. I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about what I still needed to learn.
For how long were you with him?
About a year there too. So it was
about
like
a year. And then you already quit Wayne Hancock at that time.
I kind of gave Wayne notice, and I went out on the road a couple more times with him, giving him a chance to find another bass player. So for a while, I was like playing with both bands. That was, oh my God,
nice.
That was really cool. But yeah, I ended up doing a year with Jim, and that kind of ran its course. I think of it as an apprenticeship for sure. Then I went back to ZACK and started playing with. I started my own group kind of by necessity. Started playing with my old guitar buddy from the Afterlife. And he couldn't do a certain gig, and I was new in town, and I needed to work, you know. So I was like, okay, I'll make a band for this gig, and that ended up being a trio called Hot City that played trad and swing trio, trumpet, bass, and Bill Dindal on plectrum guitar, wonderful guitar player. And we gigged for years around Sacramento. Started a Western swing group called the Sacktown Playboys. Gosh, it's hard to keep track of all the bands I played with. I can't overstate. Sacramento is really underrated in a way. It certainly doesn't have the gig economy of Austin or New Orleans. But there are opportunities, and there's this great tradition of, you know, the traditional jazz scene there from the Jazz Jubilee. That was a whole generation of older musicians who were playing that stuff, who you could still call to, you know, fill out bands with and learn from. And then this is so a lot of people don't know this. For Western swing, you know, Bob Wills actually moved to Sacramento in the 1950s. He had a ballroom called Wills Point, and for a couple years was out in Sacramento. Eventually, he went back on the road or back to Tulsa, and a lot of his band members, including some greats like Tiny Moore, stayed in Sacramento. They liked it. They decided to stay. So Tiny opened Tiny Moore Music, and that whole kind of crowd formed the Western Swing Society in Sacramento. So there's this also, you know, there's this trad scene, there's this Western swing scene with roots, significant roots, you know, plus, you know, there was the punk alternative thing happening on with the great all ages club, and then the ska thing. So yeah, and with slap bass, really, you know, it fills up so much. It's the bass and the percussion, you know, so you can get away with, if you find a guitar player, you can form a duo, you know, or a trio. So I played so many duo and trio gigs, you know, that I was able to really work and be a full-time working musician in Sacramento for most of the last decade before moving to Austin, with a cruise ship interlude. In 2016, I was out doing the $1 Million Quartet musical on a cruise ship. But other than that, there were so many bands in Sacramento. I literally stopped counting. People would say, how many bands are you in? I'll be like, I don't really know. You know, some bands, they'd maybe just call you around Oktoberfest for a polka gig. And some bands you play with every week. So really, it was a wonderful time.
Tell me any stories like that you had, you know, from the road playing with Wayne the Train.
Boy, let's see. Stories. Where to start? It was definitely a wild time. You know, Wayne.
How old were you when you played with him?
I joined when I was, I think, 31, 32.
Okay.
Like that. Yeah. Geez, that was really my first experience with a regular touring band. So getting to go to all these different places. You know, our first gig was in Spain. Like I flew out to Austin to join up with him, and we kind of. I was like, well, do you want to hear me play your stuff? I've been shedding every one of his albums, most of which I already owned. I think all of which I already owned at that point. Just trying to learn every single song. And he was like, I'll pretty much know within a minute or two if you've got what it takes. So he, eventually on like the second day I was out there, he was like, all right, let's try Thunderstorms and Neon Signs, and got halfway through it. And he was like, yeah, you got it. So I was in.
That's great. So first shows were in Europe.
Yeah. We kicked off with this amazing tour. Played Barcelona, Madrid, Valencia, Bilbao, and then we had 3 gigs in Italy and went up to Belgium and Netherlands for a week around those parts. That was absolutely amazing. What an experience that was.
We thought you told me a little bit how you discovered slap bass and how did you get interested in music, but how did you learn how to play? Did you have like a formal education, or it was mostly self-taught?
Yeah, I would definitely be what one would consider self-taught. I've not to take away from all of the wonderful players who I've learned from. As we mentioned, I took a lesson from you, and I would periodically do things like I went to Chicago once and contacted Bo Sample in advance and got a lesson from him. But I would go see bands, and I would just watch, just literally look at their hands to see how they're slapping, and playing along to records. That was the main thing, just playing along to records. So, when I first really got the bug, my dad had the Sun Sessions on vinyl. I had a Stray Cats Greatest Hits tape. And then I would also, Reverend Horton Heat was on the radar. So yeah, Bill Black, Lee Rocker, and Jimbo Wallace were like my kind of starter kit for slap bass. Really got into that. There was a local band called the Chrome Addicts that did kind of a jumpin', swingin' blues thing.
Okay.
Really cool quartet. I had one of their albums, and I would go see them. They had a bass player, Ben Thompson. Didn't slap really, but he had a really sweet swing and groove, played along to their stuff. And then I started to really get kind of the swing and the Western swing bug.
And just a quick question. Were like a Little Charlie and the Nightcats, were they from Sacramento as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
They had some slappers. Have you ever seen them with a slap player?
I think I saw them once in those formative years. A lot of times they were out on the road, or they would play at clubs I was too young to get into.
Okay.
But later I got to know Charlie, and we actually did some gigging together, which was a great experience.
As the Nightcats?
No. Actually, he would play guitar and get like an old folks home gig, $50 a person. And he would never do a gig like that in public because he has to get paid more if it's like a public gig. But if it's just for the old folks home, so we'd play like traditional jazz and swing tunes. And then he called me out for a blues gig, backing up Kiki Gomez, Spanish harp player. And that was really cool. Yeah, he was definitely a mentor. Rest in peace, Charlie.
Yeah, I remember when I discovered that band. It was like, oh wow, these guys are cool, and I haven't heard about him until I moved to San Francisco. I did not know about him in while I was living in Europe. Do you remember who was the first guy that you saw slapping the bass?
Possibly Jimbo.
Jimbo, okay.
Yeah, possibly.
In Sacramento?
Yeah, in Sacramento. I was at that Eldorado Saloon again. Yeah, there were some bands there. So yeah, probably Jimbo, but I definitely had heard recordings before that, so I was already aware of it.
There's something special, when you see it in person. I remember first time me seeing in person, I completely freaked out. I was like, okay, so this is it. I was 11 or something. I was like, okay, this is what I'm gonna be doing until the rest of my days, till the end of my days. Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned very briefly that you did a cruise gig with a $1 Million Quartet. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure, that was great. I do have a theater background as well, so it was great having that role where I had a couple lines, not very many, but I was a character. So it wasn't like I was just like a pit orchestra musician that happened to be on stage. I was playing one of Carl Perkins' brothers. Um, so I got to kind of act, even if it was kind of quiet, like behind the scenes things. Well, not behind the scenes, but just mumble, mumble, mumble over here. But also play, doing the rockabilly. That show is I don't know if you all know that show. It's a successful Broadway musical kind of retelling of the Sun Records $1 Million Quartet with Elvis, Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Johnny Cash, and the day that they all met. And it's dramatized, but it was fun playing the rockabilly and being on a cruise gig and seeing the Caribbean and some Rio de Janeiro as well, and just kind of doing that thing for 8 months. It was definitely an adventure. There was kind of the opportunity to go do the same thing again, but I kind of felt like it was a good thing to do once for me personally. But I didn't want to keep doing the same thing unless I wanted to make a whole career out of that, which there were definitely worse lines of work. But I had so much going on with all these different projects and kind of wanted to keep pursuing my own things. So yeah, it was back to Sacramento after that.
Was it a challenge to be away for such a long period of time? You mentioned 8 months, right?
Yeah, it was 8 months. Yeah, it was supposed to be 7 months. And then like in the last month, they were like, oh, we're going to need you for another month. It wasn't like optional. I mean, of course you could just quit, but then it's like, oh, that kind of leaves a bad taste. And we've come this far. So I wasn't able to get home for Thanksgiving, but I made it home for Christmas. So that was nice. Yeah, it was a challenge, but it was a great adventure. So
I bet. I mean, how old were you back then?
I was 36 then, a very young 36.
Nice. I mean, it's being away for such a long period of time. I mean, I don't mind being on the road for a long time, but being on a cruise ship, I was thinking about that when I was younger. Like, would I like to do that or not? But playing the same kind of like same songs with same people every day, a couple of times a day. It's just like, oh, and then you don't see much. I mean, I guess you told me a little bit. Did you you go to a city and then you sometimes you stay for a few days in the same place, right?
Most of the time it was just daytime, and then you're off to the next spot, or you're off
Okay.
to sea. But the Olympics hired our ship to be a floating hotel for the Rio Summer Olympics in 2016.
Oh, okay.
So we went all the way down to Rio, and then just had 3 weeks for the Olympics to happen. We had like, gold medal basketball players using our gym and whatnot. It was pretty amazing. So got to see some of the Olympics, but really my focus was just going around and seeing all of the samba. There was samba everywhere, and I made a point to seek out some bossa nova, which was, you had to look for the bossa, but it was there, and it was beautiful to experience.
That's awesome. I never been to Rio. I've been to Brazil, been to Sao Paulo, been to Recife, but I never been to Rio. I'd like to go. I love, going to Latin America in general. To Mexico I go all the time, but it's to South America, like, I don't go as often as I would like to. There's not enough time to go everywhere. Okay, so let's move on. Like, so you are back to Sacramento after the cruise ship, and who were you playing after that?
So when I was on the cruise ship, I had the concept for this group called the Tropicali Flames, which would kind of blend. I love old rhythm and blues, the really swinging stuff. So, and doo-wop, vocal harmony groups. So this band kind of was a combination of swing music. We would do some straight up swing tunes, you know, with that kind of, we give it some of that R&B energy, and it could even be a little bit Louis Prima at times, although not intentionally. That just kind of happened. Although I love Louis Prima, but you know, definitely a high energy swinging R&B group. That's Larry Carr on drums. We also played with the wonderful Derek McDonald, Danny Sandoval on saxophone. You guys got to catch this cat. He is a force of nature. Amazing. He's told me any number of times, and you can always hear it in his playing. Every time he plays as if it's going to be the last time he will ever play. So he really brings, you know, technique and energy and passion and talent. So he's great, and the rhythm section was just great. To be as a band leader, you know, lead vocalist, it was such a privilege to be able to kind of just cut loose when you get to the end of the form and just go like, okay, boys, let's take it, and just know like, oh man, we are going to be swinging now, just like unleashing this great power. Some of the best gigs of my life. So that's with my good pal Chris Wilkinson on guitar there. So Chris would play guitar for my group, the Tropicali Flames, and I would play bass for his Western swing group, the Sweet and Low Melody Co. So those bands kind of coexisted, and both kind of sprang from my musical partnership with Chris, which has been very fruitful. So we're still working on albums for both of those bands. Stay tuned, everybody. Yeah, that's Chris on guitar. And right in the middle there, that's Owen Dillingham, wonderful electric mandolin player. So he learned from the great Tiny Moore. He took music lessons at Tiny Moore Music, Bob Wills alumni. And eventually Tiny hired Owen to teach alongside of him. So really Owen like learned electric mandolin from the master of electric mandolin. That's Tropicali Flames again, at a live recording concert. Anyway, so yeah, Owen is a great representative of the Sacramento Western swing living tradition that it's such a privilege to be a part of.
And this is you with Tropicali, right?
Yeah, I normally don't look that evil, but the beast was unleashed, I guess.
And okay, so this is all happening in Sacramento in the late 2010s, I guess. And then you moved back to Austin, where you still are. So who are you playing with the most in Austin? What's your main gig these days?
I should shout out a couple groups that I also played with in Sacramento. Jazz Jeton, we did Gypsy Jazz. That was a great learning experience. And Elvis Cantu, who's from San Antonio, I met him in Austin, and he moved out near Sacramento. He's part of the Wild Records crowd and does some great rockabilly. Anyway, so all of that was going on up until pandemic hit, and then it all, of course, totally stopped. And then a couple months in, I saw a Facebook post from Hot Club of Cowtown, which has been one of my very favorite, if not favorite, band for many years. Saw that their incredible bass player Jake Irwin was retiring from the road. So I'd opened for Cowtown before, and I had gotten to know Jake before. And so had done like a jam session or two type of thing with Whit Smith, the guitar player. So I kind of sent an email to Whit saying, hey, if you're looking for somebody, could be a good fit possibly. And he wrote back, and eventually they flew me out to audition, passed the audition. And so I was in the band. So then I moved to Austin basically to join Hot Club of Cowtown to really kind of give it my all. It's they've got this wonderful legacy of hot jazz and Western swing, including some of the absolute best bass players have gone through their ranks. So, you know, I guess I could have done it from afar, but I just wanted to give it my all and not let the fans down, because I'm one of them.
Is that keeping you busy like all the time in Austin? Are you guys mostly on the road, or it's or you play around town as well, around Austin?
most of our gigs are on the road. When we are all in town, then we have we call it a weekly at the Continental Club. But yeah, that's definitely the main gig. And of course, everything is still kind of stopping and starting with COVID and, taking some time to build up. But I've also got some sub gigs playing with some other bands around in Austin. And I'm thinking of starting up my own project too.
What would your own project be? What's your preference?
It would probably be something kind of in that R&B kind of thing. Yeah,
in Austin, right?
Yeah. I really love doo-wop, and I love singing harmony vocals, and that can really add so much. Not as many people do that as might, but that would be cool. Maybe do some choreography,
dance moves.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Get some matching outfits. Just have some fun,
Sure, that sounds like fun. Let me know. I would like to hear that if you start doing that. So all right. So you were in Austin, hot Club of Cowtown, main thing. You achieved your dream to play with some of your favorite people. Who would you say? I mean, this is not fair question, but like, do you have a favorite artist to play with, like that you can choose if you had to choose one person or one band since you started playing with?
Oh gosh,
since you started playing bass.
Well, I mean, right now my main thing is Hot Club of Cowtown. And I like to think I've progressed in my playing over the years. So I definitely do things now that I wasn't able to do before, and hopefully am expressing myself to a fuller degree in my playing. So it certainly is a very special experience for me. But like I mentioned earlier, I've always loved just playing with a ton of people. So, you don't have to pick just one, luckily. And that's another thing about bass. It's, the role of the bass, while there certainly are nuances and, traditions unto their own, you can walk a bass or play two beats. So a lot of what I do, I kind of bring my own, basically the same style to different projects. Western swing group, you can take the same approach you're trying to outline the chords and keep good time, basically. You're using the major scale a lot of the time. So you can, take Western swing or doo-wop, or I love playing along to Latin music. And Tropicali Flames, we do some Latin Caribbean stuff also, which I really love that for slap. Especially with I love the quad slap, and sometimes it can be awkward to try and force that over a swing groove, because swing is very triplet based, but with the straight eighth Latin stuff, be it quad or whatever, just those straight eighth notes, I really enjoy kind of mixing them up and alternating different slaps with those. So it's talk about rich tradition.
Since you have a bass with you, do you mind showing that vibe a little bit?
Let's try it.
So now you're going to be demonstrating a little bit of Latin, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do this. There we go. So yeah, where to start? Djordje, at that lesson we had 15 years ago, I think you were teaching me the, I call it like a rumba, that type of thing, which, yeah, I like to do that. We cover the song Peanut Vendor in Tropicali Flames, which is great for that. There's a bossa lick I had mentioned to you earlier. The basic bossa kind of bass line I usually go for is like. So to slap it up a little bit, I'll do like a. So that's fun. That'll have. I'll do like a slower quad there, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, or like a kind of a double time. But yeah, there's a ton of stuff, like I mentioned with James Brown, that's just fun to experiment with in a Latin groove. I have a great 3 CD compilation. I just kind of randomly found somewhere, kind of 1950s Cuban stuff. It's almost like, you know, it's big bands, but not swing, of course. Just some great recordings. I really like Benny Morey is a fantastic guy to go to check out and just, you know, slap at various tempos and see what comes out.
Any slappers that you discovered on the way when you were researching Latin Cuban music?
No.
Okay.
I've heard people tell me that Cachao would slap.
Yeah, both Cachao and Cachaito.
But I've not been able to find recordings of this.
Okay. I'll send you some.
Oh, send me, baby. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So
I've seen some videos of Tola Loche as well.
What do you say?
I've seen some videos of Tola Loche in the kind of a conjunto type of thing.
And you told me before the show, but you haven't mentioned during the show about that you played conjunto as well. That was in San Antonio, right?
Yeah, I had a neighbor, Hugo Gonzalez. You can check him out on Spotify. We never gigged together, but he'd see me loading my bass in and out, so he'd call me across the street. He was a lifelong conjunto band leader at a young Flaco Jimenez in his band way back when. Anyway, so I'd go over there and we would jam together. And at first he wanted to play what he called champagne music, which was kind of like Frank Sinatra, young at heart, that type of thing. You know, he knew I played swing and jazz. So I was like, okay, well, that's fun. We can do that a little. But he had just like books and books and books of these conjunto tunes. So we'd break those out and I'd just read down these charts, you know, handwritten, just kind of notes on chord changes. And he played bajo sexto and just had this great, you know, traditional style. And I would just slap like crazy over all of it.
Nice. So he had charts for you then. Quite
a
difference from Jim Cullen, huh?
Yeah, that was a different approach.
So who was playing bass in his band? Did he have an upright bass player?
Hugo? Yeah. Oh, at the time, I don't think he was gigging. He was kind of retired.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So you would jam basically after he retired. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. I see that. Okay. Cool. Thanks for demonstrating these licks. We're gonna talk more about this and more about interesting slap bass patterns. I know you can't choose like your favorite artist that you played with, but can you tell me who were you playing? Who are you using slap bass the most?
Wait, I don't understand.
Who are you using slap bass the most? You know, to the. I mean, since I know you played like a different music styles. You don't play slap all the time, so you know that some people ask you, "Hey, play more slap, play less slap." So, what's the most representative like for your slap playing, and where did you have to play that technique?
I see what you mean, Djordje. I slap all the time.
All right.
I warn people. I say, just so you know, like I'm a slapper, and that's what I do. And by all means, if I'm slapping too much, you should let me know. You know.
Oh, okay.
But gosh darn, man, I slap with all of these groups, even Tropic Alley Flames, which is like I mentioned, kind of doo-wop-y. Like there's not a ton of slap bass and doo-wop, but so I don't always slap, but I'm usually slapping.
All right. So did you ever have someone telling you like, "Hey, can you not slap this much?" No?
I'm really struggling to think about that.
Okay, good. I like asking that question, because sometimes, like especially like bluegrass people or like sometimes like old blues guys and like, they're like, oh, can you like, yeah, it's cool, but can you not do it that often or something, Well, I'm glad you didn't have to experience that. Did you ever have like anyone like telling you slap more?
No.
All right. Impossible. Huh?
I mean, I think I have heard that once or twice. Like, no big deal. And sometimes it'll be like maybe I'll do a gig or two, and they'll decide that maybe I'm not the bass player, to be permanently in their group. But it's all good. Every gig is different.
Do you have a different approach when you play live or when you play in the studio?
Oh, that's interesting. I haven't done all that much studio work. I definitely have my routine in the studio. I don't think I play different as far as the actual playing goes. There are things I do to prepare for the studio. Like I'll get just like a ton of breakfast tacos. That's my favorite. You can just kind of graze on them all day, just have a little taco or a half a taco when the blood sugar starts to dip a little bit, because you don't want to get too full, because that will end the session right there. And you don't want to get too hungry because you'll run out of energy, So, and then there's some things mentally, sometimes you can get nervous when you're recording. I've heard it called red light fever. Red light comes on and suddenly like, oh gosh, what happened to these things I practiced, So I'll kind of think of it, I've got a lot of pride in my hometown, Sacramento. So, and a lot of, my time has been spent there. So I'll kind of think like if I'm in a project and we're about to record, I'll be like, whatever happens, whatever comes out is going to be representative of this community and what we're doing. So I kind of just like, whatever it is, judge it how you will. This is going to be some Sacktown shit right here. So that kind of frees me a little bit, like, to just do my thing and be proud of how far it's come and not worry too much about getting a perfect result.
You mentioned that you don't record all the time, but like how many albums have you recorded so far? Do you know that?
I'm going to guess maybe 10.
Oh, okay. Any of those are like your own projects, or it's mostly on other people's projects?
Mostly sideband stuff.
Okay.
Some of which I'm very proud of and consider myself a big part of it.
Which ones are the most? Which one are you the most proud of? I mean, if you can choose something that, if some of the viewers from Slapstream would like to get your music, what would you say? Which album should they get?
What I'd say in terms of things that, like, if you happen to come to a show in Sacramento and we have a CD, like that's great. But some of the stuff isn't even online. In terms of something you could just go check out that I really, really am proud of is that Wayne Hancock record, Ride.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's not, I mean, I'm slapping the whole time. He only gave me a solo on a ballad, and I was told not to slap on that specific song. I was like, my one solo on the Wayne the Train album, and I don't get to slap. So I do kind of a melodic thing. I hope you guys like it. But no.
What is the name of the tune?
That's The Gal from Kitchen's Field.
Okay. I'll check it out.
It's not slap though.
Okay, it's fine. I play. I don't play always slap. What would you say was the highlight of your career so far?
I'd say right now being in the Hot Club of Cowtown. I'm just such a giant fan of not only the two members of the band who are in the band with me, but the bass players who've, you know, been in the band before. It's, you know, it's absolutely amazing, and it's pushing me. It's continuing to push me. Like, this is not the time to slack off. You know, you're playing with some cats, bro. Like get out the metronome and, you know, you rehearse before rehearsal, you know. And on stage, let's focus. And, you know, I'm playing to especially after so many years kind of just doing the local, like you know, bars and dances in Sacramento, which I wouldn't trade for the world. But you know, now we're playing to some bigger venues with people who are, you know, paid ticket prices to watch us. So it's even though it's like a very jazzy, swingy type of thing, it's also, there's a kind of rock and roll aggression to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still inspired, but even though I don't usually play punk rock these days, I'm still inspired by that spirit of it. So, you know, I'm talking about Red Bull again. I should get a paid sponsorship here. I usually don't drink Red Bull, but we're doing this kind of early. But I'll have like a Red Bull before I go on stage and just try and like be covered with sweat, you know, and like, let's not just be like the kind of cool bass player in the background. Like, let's rock this thing. And I have a responsibility, and they're trying as hard as they damn can. So I need
Red Bull before the show. I usually drink kombucha before the show. That's what I have on my rider.
Does that work?
I like, you know, I usually drink kombucha once or twice a day. I like that. It's not like it work. I mean, I like that. You know, yeah, it works. I don't know. It works for me.
I believe you.
It gives me all I need. But I'm usually, you know, able to go like, you know, from 0 to 100 and from 100 to 0. Doesn't matter. You know, I can sleep, you know, 5 minutes before I go on stage. So
really
train. Yeah, completely. So you know, when I used to play like with Fish Tank Ensemble, we would often play like 2 sets per night. And I would often like sleep in between those 2 sets, go backstage, sleep for 15 minutes, go back on. That's it.
That's
and then
great.
Party after that, if there's a party. If not, sleep. So, or drive, whatever we were doing back in those days. What would you say, how things like changed for you as a musician since you started and then until this point, you know, regarding everything, like music business, bands that you play with, the audience, especially the audience, and everything else that surrounds, you know, life of a musician?
How has it changed over the years?
Yeah, how, like, I mean, for you personally.
Oh gosh. Well, you know, I mean, when I first started out, I was just playing these little punk rock shows at coffee shops, you know, full of my friends were there. And then there was kind of, you know, a lot of years. You get your exceptions, like my time on the road with Wayne Hancock or the cruise ship gig, that were kind of big performative experiences. But, you know, a lot of the stuff was just working, you know, I don't know, over 200 gigs a year on average in Sacramento. And a lot of those would be at bars or restaurants or dances. So, you know, you get like the dance, you got the swing dancers there, and it's amazing to get that energy. And then a restaurant, you know, maybe nobody's paying attention to you. That took a little while. I used to get a little grumpy, like, nobody even clapped. We totally nailed this Charlie Parker tune and not a single person clapped. But, you know, I got over that. Like, they're not there for a concert. They're there to, you know, take their lady out for a drink or something, or just enjoy a nice meal. So there have been so many different kinds of gigs. So now I'm doing the Cowtown thing. So we're touring around, and we do we'll play some jazz clubs, but we also do the performing arts centers, which are, of course, bigger rooms. And, you know, there's usually not dancers. So people are just looking at you. They're just staring right at you, you know, which is the opposite experience from playing in a restaurant where no one is paying attention, or even playing for swing dance where people are enjoying it, but they're also focused on dancing. They're dancers, you know. So really, there's been a great variety, and you know, even now when I come off the road, I'll play a sub gig for now around Austin, subbing for bass players who get other gigs or whatever, and those will be at little honky tonks and that type of thing, which is great. I like it all. I love the variety.
You probably play a fair amount of festivals with the Hot Club of Cowtown. I remember I mentioned my band Fish Tank Ensemble from, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. We would often play the same festivals as Hot Club of Cowtown. We would headline one night, they would headline, night before or day later. And I remember seeing them at the jam sessions like all the time. Are you still playing those festivals?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly which ones you all played.
World music festivals. I mean, since that's what I was doing back with Fish Tank Ensemble. So.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, we just got back last weekend. We were in Maryland playing at Del Fest, which is Del McCoury and the McCoury
cool.
Bluegrass Festival, with a lot of stuff that wasn't strictly bluegrass. But that was really amazing. That was really, really amazing. Got to see some. I've never really had a bunch of experience with the bluegrass scene. I've really enjoyed this experience I have had. But there's incredible, fruitful tradition there, which was neat. But prior to that, we had done a 3-week tour of the UK. And after
3 weeks in UK, just there? Wow,
yeah,
that's great. I never toured UK for that long.
It was amazing. So we did 3 weeks, mostly around England, 1 gig in Wales, and then we finished in Edinburgh, Scotland.
Okay.
So they flew home the next day, and I was like, I'm taking a whole week and just staying in Edinburgh, and made some new friends out there. And they kind of showed me around, and I got to see a bunch of just traditional music sessions with traditional Scottish music and maybe some Irish stuff too.
That's awesome.
And going from that to the bluegrass thing, you could really hear the similarities. I mean, it wasn't like a great shock, but it was just like so immediately switching from one to the other. It was cool to feel like America being part of that tradition.
That's great. I mean, such a privilege, like traveling. I mean, that's really the best thing that you can do in this, time that we have on Earth. It's amazing. You meet different cultures, hear different music, meet different people, try to become a better human.
Yeah.
You mentioned jazz a few times. And you mentioned Charlie Parker like a couple times as well. How often do you play jazz? Like when I say jazz, I mean like a bebop or mainstream hard bop or any of that, like after 50s and on genres in styles in jazz.
I really don't. I really had that duo, the Afterlife. That's where I did basically all of that playing. I'll still kind of warm up with some walking exercises, just like a fast rhythm changes or giant steps, just to see if the muscle memory is there. I couldn't tell you what the chords are. I had it down for a while. I think I still got it. Don't put me to the test on that.
2-5 for 2-5 for 2-5 for 2-5 for 2-5 for 2-5 for 2-5.
Try 2-beat. Try a rumba.
What did you say?
I like to start 2-beat and then walk it and then rumba.
Okay. All right. I did a cover of Giant Steps like with slap, and I mixed up like some 7/8 in it, and then thought it was fun. Whoa. It was, but when you play it by yourself and then it would slap, you can do anything you want. So, it's when I was doing before the Slapstream, when I was doing Slap Bass Sunday, with all these slaps on my channel. How often, and do you teach at all? Do you teach bass?
I don't currently have students. I have taught. There's only so many upright bass players as opposed to guitar, and then really I'm most qualified to teach the slap stuff.
Okay.
And being self-taught, I also don't have the benefit of having come from a structured formal education. So it's a little bit, my approach is kind of casual, like feel it out as you can go. But I've in the past, I've had, you know, kind of collect some students and then they come and go. But then, you know, COVID happened. And so that stopped completely. And then I moved to Austin. So don't have students at the moment.
So what is the best way for people to reach you if they want a lesson from Zach?
Oh, I mean, I can always do online lessons, but yeah, if you just find me on social media, there's my Instagram there.
All right.
I'm on Facebook as well. Yeah. Or
so all
Zach,
these links going to be in the description, are in the description of this video. So follow Zach and hit him up for a lesson. All right, let's talk about your bass influences and your approach to playing bass and slap bass. How did you develop your own style of playing and all that fun stuff? But let's start with your slap bass influences.
Yeah, well, we mentioned getting started when I was just starting. So as I said, Bill Black, Lee Rocker, and Jimbo Wallace were kind of my starters. But then as I got kind of more comfortable with just the basic slaps and simultaneously like expanding a bit from 145 rockabilly or blues or what have you, really there were three bands that I would really practice to a bunch. That was Wayne Hancock, Big Sandy and the Fly Right Boys, and the Hot Club of Cowtown. So Rick Ramirez was the guy for Wayne Hancock, Wally Hersom for Big Sandy. And then Billy Horton was on the first couple Hot Club records. And then Jake Irwin has been a massive influence on me as well. And then there was I also had the High Noon Stranger Things record with Kevin Smith. A couple things with Jimmy Sutton that were influential. I really love that first Mighty Blue Kings record. There's actually not much slap on there, but the swing and groove and just the whole recording is really a wonderful, infectious energy. Yeah, so those guys were definitely very huge. And you know, as mentioned, I took a couple lessons. I did one with you and one with Bo Sample, and then I've had some kind of more informal get-togethers with Ryan Gould here, Mark Rubin, and Jake Irwin as well. Those are the guys that have really kind of shaped my stuff. Oh, and then I've never seen him live, but you know, Nicholas Dubochet does those videos, and there's the one where he's doing a quad slap with the flamenco thing. I slightly changed the hand approach on that, but that really got me like experimenting with quads, which I love. I love the straight eight slapping attack, as mentioned.
When you said that you changed the fingers, like with the fingering, or like what was the what was the thing?
Well, he was using like kind of the side of his hand, and so I kept hurting myself doing that. So I kind of moved to just like kind of the ball of the pinky, basically creating and then sticking my thumb out, so creating like basically a paddle that you just kind of alternate. So really, you could do like a, you know, a 6 or an 8 slap or whatever. At some point, you're just hitting the thing over and over again. You could do a million slap, you know, just pull, hit a million times. You know, the trick is to make it musical, of course. But yeah.
Shout out to Nicolas Dubochet for doing those videos. See, Nicolas, influential in the US. So I featured him like one of the first episodes. He had a bad connection, so I was bummed. Like you know, since so many people like him here, and he never tours outside of France. And I discovered him by chance, really, and we became good friends. You know, every time I go to France, you know, we hang out and slap our basses. And I know the guy like for, I don't know, 15 years now, I think. He's the first guy that I featured on the Art of Slap Bass. So that was the kind of my thing. Okay, so I'm going to give this guy some props.
Yeah, baby.
And he deserves it. So I'm happy we did that. As far as you mentioned mostly nowadays slappers. As far as the original cats, original guys, like, are there any people that you'd like to mention as an influence?
Oh shoot. I mean, I had some Milt Hinton. I have a collection he did later that has a lot of really cool slap stuff on it. Although I love listening to his Cab Calloway recordings, which aren't full of slapping, but it's just swinging. Um, gosh.
Well, the stuff that he did, that Milt Hinton did with Cab Calloway, had like that plucking the bass, which is kind of the highlight of slap bass, especially in those years, and kind of like something that ended slap in jazz. I believe that's 1939. And what was the song with Cab Calloway before that? I mean, it's not Milt Hinton, but it's
Reefer Man.
Reefer Man, yeah.
Yeah. That's
you got to be 32 or something. Anyway, other slap bass players from back in those days?
Well, I've mentioned Bill Black. I mean, that's not jazz, but he's a slapper from yesteryear. Gosh, a lot of the old recordings, this is terrible, but I won't even necessarily look to see who's playing. I mean, Ryan Gould has certainly turned me on to some great Pops Foster stuff. But I don't know. I just I've really been very, very influenced by people who are alive and around these days. So that's one wonderful thing about the Slapstream that is just so cool, is that it's giving props to some amazing musicians who are around here and are doing this beautiful, totally underrated style with all of the upright bass players in the world. Why do so few of them slap? I guess I'm preaching to the choir here, but you're blending melody with percussion. Like, come on, how could you not want to do that all of the time? And it just sounds dope.
I agree with you. And that was actually one of my incentives, when I started Art of Slap Bass originally and Slapstream later on, because I don't think that all these people like deserve to get being recognized once they're gone, once they die. I think that we have to give props to all these cats that play these days, and so many great and amazing players that might have been forgotten if they if there was no like Slapstream. I mean, Slapstream gonna help as much as possible, but it's still not like a major media exposure, which kind of like dictates what's going to happen after we're gone. But it also can like give a certain incentive like for other bass players like to dig into that rabbit hole and find out about all these players, which is great. And that was basically why I started Art of Slap Bass. I wanted to give props to the old guys, but mostly guys that do it now, because that's how this whole scene is spreading, not because we the old guys are essential and I love them, and it's always the coolest. You're my influences, Willie Dixon, Milt Hinton, Joe Zinken, and then you talk about those guys. Yeah, you're the coolest guy in the world, but it's because nobody knows them. They're like alternative. I mean, in our scene, everybody knows them. But if you give props like to the guys that make at least as much effort as those cats these days, and then that's, I think, what kind of matters the most, and that's what we can do. So well, and discover like also other bass players that people don't often talk about. They were playing back then. I remember Joe Zinka, like nobody was mentioning him like until 10, 15 years ago or something. I remember giving an interview to rockabillybase.com, if you remember that website. And they asked me for my influences, and I mentioned Joe Zinkin. And I got like so many emails, like then, and people ask, who's this guy? Who's that guy? And then a few years later, Kent from Nashville, he posted a few of Joe Zinkin's videos on YouTube, and everybody freaked out. It's like, yeah, that's what I'm telling you all these years. Check out this guy. So I really appreciate that you're giving props to all the nowadays slappers.
Yeah. I mean, it's also just such an immediate thing when you can actually see somebody alive in the flesh playing in front of you, or even just knowing like this is happening. We could go to Chicago this weekend and see, whoever at the Green Mill.
Absolutely. That's what I do every time I'm in Chicago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every time. Joel Patterson is he usually plays when I play in Chicago, and then after the show I go to Green Mill, and it's great. It's it's all my favorite experience. I wanted to ask you, since you had like so many gigs, so many bands, what would be your advice for people how to get a gig, how to find a band to play with and musicians to play with?
Well, certainly different gigs come about in different ways. Hot Club of Cowtown, I reached out to the bands when there was an opening, and sent an email. So definitely don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I definitely thought about it. I didn't casually send the email. You're talking to people about what they're doing with their life if it's a serious project. So it's their life's work. You don't want to just kind of flippantly be like, I think I could, I could do this, unless you really, really want to go for it and really think maybe you could. Not saying don't challenge yourself. But one of my biggest lessons was just to book the gigs, and then hire the players. And once I did that, I mean, it led to some incredibly musically fruitful opportunities. I mentioned Hot City, my trio kind of got started in that way. But, if you can find the work, then people will play with you, assuming that you're handling your business and are able to play the material that you want to play.
That's an excellent advice. And I don't recall anyone else mentioning that, but that's a really good advice.
It's really helped me.
Yeah, I bet. I think that's what people, need. If you have work, they're gonna play with you. I was, when people ask me, like, I usually talk like being present also in a social media world, but also go to jam sessions. It's kind of hard like to say, because, and that's why I love asking this question, because the different generations have different advices. Some older cats were like, oh, hey, do the post an ad in a music store. I mean, that can get you somewhere, but not very far. So it's just like, okay. So
if you try every approach,
absolutely, yeah.
Because I've had good Craigslist experiences too.
Oh, nice.
You just try everything.
Everything all the time. It's a full-time job of trying.
Yeah.
I would like to hear your opinion on what would be your advice for younger bass players, what they should do, and if you can point out to some common mistakes that you see that other bass players do, or also if I can rephrase this, like, what would Zach tell to the young Zach, like what he should be doing, and what you did, something that you might have to do. I mean, something that you could have done better.
Oh gosh. I mean, I'd probably show myself a couple licks. But I was just so fortunate. You know, it's a learning process. So I've always, you know, my dad was a school teacher for his career. And when I would go to school, he would always tell me, like, Zach, don't be afraid to ask questions. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. So just, you know, if you can just come from it from a humble perspective, like, nobody knows everything. You could be the most talented musician who's ever been born, double the talent, and you're still never, and live a full life of practice, and you're never going to have it all down. It's, you know, it's so mathematical. Like, the infinite lives within music. So I'm getting a little out there here, but just be humble and willing to learn. And don't let ego get in the way of learning. That'd be disastrous. That said, have fun. I think a huge underrated part of what we consider talent is just the ability to keep going, which, if you're not enjoying it, you're probably going to burn out. So do something that's fun and that speaks to you. And, you know, if you're practicing things that you like and that inspire you, that's going to become a part of your playing, and you're going to develop a style that's based on things that you like. So ultimately, like, having fun with your playing is an efficient way towards real self-expression.
You mentioned practicing. So is there anything that you would recommend to other bass players to practice on everyday bass, or is there anything that you practice every day or often?
I would say the biggest thing that, I mean, I could use reminder too is metronome is really great to play with. It really just takes your time up a notch right away. You know, even like 10 minutes with a metronome before I go on stage, I feel like I'm going to play a tighter gig than if I hadn't done that. I learned so much by playing along to records, CDs, what have you, of bands that have good time. So that definitely helped me. And that's important too, because it teaches you to listen to what's happening, not only play to a metronome. But yeah, practicing along to good time, be it metronome or bands.
Do you have a way to warm up before the gig?
We like to do a little bit of playing, and I really like vocalizing right before going on. Some harmony parts. Not only does it get the vocals tighter, and it's good to, if you're singing together, you want to blend it and get it sounding good. So it's practical there, but it's also kind of an intimate thing. You know, sometimes I won't even play bass. We'll just sing around the guitar a little bit. That's a nice way to kind of warm up and just get kind of all on the same page, you know, together as a group right before going up there. And then another shout out to Ryan Gould. Ryan has showed me a stretching exercise that's good, that I like to do both when I get up in the morning and then right before I play. I've forgotten exactly his method of stretching, but basically I just try and like stretch out every kind of part of my body and just like, let's be aware of my whole body and get it feeling loose and fine, so that when I do get on stage and grab the bass, my movements have intention.
I think that's a kind of important thing that I should remind myself, you know, about warming up before the gig. I never do it, and I never had problems really. But you know, I can see that I could, and I would recommend.
You're busy
some stretching. Yeah, I do my sleep thing, and then like going from, you know, especially playing with, you know, with, I don't know, Lemmy or Tiger Army or whoever, that I play like these louder bands, you know, and then it's then you're just like really 110, you know, from the first note, and there's no stopping. So, but those those gigs are usually shorter, about an hour or hour and 15. So it's not too bad. It's not like playing like 4, 5, 6 hours, and then you have to think about all these other things, stamina in the first place. Let's talk a little bit about your gear. Tell me how many basses you own. What are those basses? What kind of strings you play? Pickups, amps, and basically all the nerdy, geeky gear questions.
Sure. Yeah. I'm liking my rig right now. I've never been a huge gear guy. For years, I just had the bass I kind of started on that we bought at a local music shop. That was a Becker model bass. I think it was from Romania. But yeah, I don't think it was anything super special, but I did, I played the bass for 20 years plus. So it got to be my baby. And I used, so that one's in my dad's garage right now, just so I have something whenever I'm back in Sacramento, along with the GK 212 combo amp that I used for the last decade or so around there. But the Cowtown gig, we fly to a lot of stuff, so you can't bring a combo amp. So I just bring a GK Legacy 1200 head, and usually a 410 will be provided speaker. But I now have I have the Flyaway bass from Lemur Music that has the neck that you can unscrew, and you take the neck off, put the neck in a box, and then put the body in a different box, and then you kind of latch them together. So you can count it as one bag or as 2 bags when you check it, depending on what that airline's policy is that day and what employee happens to be working. I won't bore you with those complaints. But yeah, really liking that. I played that model of bass years ago in the Lemur showroom in San Juan Capistrano. And I was like, oh, this is the bass I want. It felt really good. I had played, Jim Cullum owned a Chadwick that I would use, but I had trouble with the tone on that. Maybe because the neck folds into the body as far as travel basses go. You have to cut into the body to make that happen. So maybe that's what affected the tone. I don't know. But I recently got a Mark bass 210 cabinet that I use around Austin. That's super lightweight. It's ridiculous how lightweight it is. I love it. I have to act like it's heavier than it is to look more impressive that I'm carrying all this gear around. And then my strings are Corday Lambert.
All right. Is it hard to get those strings these days? I know that he's always improving the strings, and then it's like always something different. And then how long are you able to play those strings for?
Well, the first set that I got that still is on the bass at my dad's, that was actually a prototype set that was sent to my buddy Mike Brown. Shout out Mike, who's very good at he'll put on different strings and he'll test the strings and he'll kind of write critiques about the strings. So when he was done with those, he gave those to me. So I put those on before the Wayne Hancock gig in 2011, and they're still on that bass, the same 4 strings.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
wow, you played the same set for 10 years?
Yeah.
Over 10 years.
Totally. Yeah. And they didn't break.
Well, that's a good investment. So, and how's the sound? Same as, or?
I mean, it certainly hasn't much changed in the last 8 years. Maybe the first year it was a little springier. I honestly, I'm not positive about that. But I usually do play with an amp anyway. So, so that helps maybe alleviate if there's a slight deadening. But I really like them. Those ones are particularly low tension, which was really helpful to me in kind of experimenting with different slaps. Just made it a little easier on the hands. And then a couple years ago, I had a friend who bought 2 sets from Nicolas, and he gave me one in exchange for bass lessons. So I've never actually ordered direct myself, but I've had these on here for now a couple years, I guess, 2 years.
I remember him sending me, I think, the very, very, very first prototype of the strings, like, and that gotta be, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago. But I'm a steel string guy, so I don't really play them, but I remember liking it. What I wanted to ask you, I have like a couple more questions for you, and I would definitely like you to hear you play and discuss like some more slap patterns with you. Have you mentioned what kind of pickup you're using?
Right now, I have an Underwood. I've been having a little bit of problems with it. I love the tone, but maybe, you know, I had a luthier trick out the bridge so that ideally they kind of slide right in and stay put. They've been rattling around, and I stick little bits of paper in there to kind of keep it steady, but they keep slipping around on me and making a buzz, and then I'll be like trying to tighten the pickup mid-song, you know, because the bass is buzzing. So actually at this bluegrass festival, Fishman was there, and they actually gave me a set of Fishman pickups. So that was just this last weekend. So I'm going to try those out.
So you might become a Fishman guy?
Maybe. The future's unwritten.
Is it a full circle?
I forget the name of it. I don't have the adjustable bridge, so it's the one that goes under the legs.
Okay.
On this travel bass, there's a screw in the neck. That's how you take the neck off. But you can change the action by loosening or tightening the screw. So
okay,
just real quick. I haven't yet done that mid gig. Usually, I just set it to a place I like. But it's cool to have that option.
To loosen the strings? Is that what you said?
No, by loosening the screw that adjusts the neck.
Okay.
That changes the action.
Yeah, but it would change the intonation as well. You would have to retune the bass if you did that in the middle of a gig.
I mean, I'll tune between songs anyway.
Okay. All right. I mean, if you play, yeah, I guess you tune like in between each song.
No, not in between two. But you know, if we play a real thrasher, and then the next one up is a ballad, and it's been half a set, maybe let's check and make sure we're close here.
Yeah, we all have to do that sometimes. I think that less with steel strings, but you know, like more with guts or weed whackers or what nylons, whatever it's out there these days. Do you mind grabbing your bass and let's talk about those few other patterns that you mentioned to me before the show that you would like to talk about and then explain to our audience?
Sure. Yeah.
And that box, ZS box behind you, it's for the bass?
That's for the neck. Yeah.
Oh, nice. All right. I like the Gene Krupa style logo.
Yeah, these people at TSA, they just like this permanent marker. They just write on my luggage and they put stickers right on the logo. Like, come on, guys, really?
Yeah. All right.
Okay, so yeah, there's a couple things. This is kind of a subtle thing, but occasionally we'll be playing like something that's kind of medium, slow, or even kind of ballady, you know. And I like to do a light slap. Like I said, I'm always slapping, Djordje. Even if it's very subtle, there's some slap going on. So
I support that.
All right. Sometimes I'll slap above the left hand so that it makes a little tap or click, but the note still sustains. Because if you slap here, it stops, right? My bass is buzzing. I need to take it in this week. But here, I don't know. Can you hear the sustain?
I can hear it perfectly. Sounds awesome.
So that's kind of a neat thing. And then also, even aside from the sustain, it's just a different tone up here. So, I mean, if we're going to be doing so much slapping of the neck, I like to kind of think about like what the sound is. You know, not every slap is created equal. So, so I'll kind of play with that sometimes, and even that like James Brown lick. I'll kind of move it around. Or do like a sextuple. I know this is getting pretty far out, and practically you're not going to use that on every tune, but it's just a fun way to experiment with the sound of the slap itself.
I like that. I like that you're experimenting like that. So when you mention sextuples, it's basically two triplets. How would you use that in what kind of situation?
Again, a slower tune, and really not that many tunes. There's a Cowtown track called Home that sometimes I like to practice with that too. We usually don't call that one. Let's see, what kind of waltz? Not so much. But I mean, theoretically, you could use it as 6/8 notes. I guess it's you could hear it as a triplet or an 8 depending on the context. That would be as an 8th note. Yeah, that's a lot of slapping.
There's never enough slapping. Never enough slapping.
It's tricky. Like with the more extended you get, the more of a challenge it is to make it musical. But there's room to work with the stuff there. I mean, they have drum solos with no pulls at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's. I thought about it while we were, since the beginning of the show. And how do you call when you call like 5?
Quintuple.
Quintuple. Okay. And I remember, like, what is the like 5 if you do over 1, like, so it would be quintuplet. So with T at the end. So like the same as like if we have like a triple slap, it will be just like pull, slap, slap. And then, but a triplet would be the same, but it's particular rhythm
right, equally divisible.
So takata 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 would be a triplet. I mean, triple slap and a triplet, but a triple slap could be also rumble, right? Like takata 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 taka.
Or a 2-beat.
And in that case, quintuplet would be ta 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 ta. Okay, so I'm glad I remember. I was like, I was a little bit like I was losing concentration. It was like, how do you say? I know that I know the word. I know that I know the word. I know that I practiced that in my school. Like, how to do that, how to do that. And then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, got it. So cool. All right. So I'm glad we clarified that. Is there anything else that you wanted to show and demonstrate?
Yeah, I could just do a couple things really quick. This one I learned from Jake Irwin, actually. It's kind of a little stutter, like it's. So you just hit it and then just take a little break for a second. Yeah, that's just a fun little thing you can throw in. I like the.
Sorry, I have to bug you, but I don't have a bass. So, so what do you do there? Like, I didn't get it completely.
I mean, basically, it's just kind of a double. I mean, really, you could surround it with any number of licks and count accordingly. But
every time you play that, it was on a downbeat. What I noticed, but besides that,
would it be on a 2? I go 1, 2, 3, 4. So they hit on the 2, maybe. Just a little lick.
Okay.
You
know that I want to know everything, so I want to make sure that I know it already, or then that I have to practice it immediately when I get my hands on the bass.
I like the overhand triple, right? Or you can do it like that. I call this the doggy paddle. No matter if you do it like that or like that, I like experimenting with dynamics with that. So it tends to kind of be a flashy, all-out type of thing. But I'll kind of bring it down quieter. Then bring it up. So that's a fun thing to play with. It's like a drum roll, basically, right? So you don't have to always go all out on the drum roll. It's fun to play with the volume on that.
I like that. I like using different dynamics for slaps as well, because you can really create a different thing. I would definitely, before I ask you my final question, like I would like to ask you if there's anything else that I might have missed, and I would like to ask you to play, for a little longer, or as long as you want, like some kind of improvisation, so that where you can incorporate all these different techniques that you use. And also, but before that, is there anything else that we might have missed, like to say or demonstrate?
I don't think so.
Anything on your list?
I'm looking at my list right now. Can you see? I'm like, what little licks? No, that's
about it. All right. Do you mind like playing?
Yeah, I'll just
a song or something. Like some kind of improvisation solo, and then we're getting close to the end.
Yeah. Okay. This is just right off the top of my head, but the first track on the first Cowtown album was called "I Had Someone Else." So I'll kind of just go over that form and mess around a little bit.
All right, there we go. So we've been talking for almost 2 hours, but the time flies when you when you talk about slap bass. At least for me, I can do this for hours or days.
Well, you got like the life story pretty much there, so that takes up a little time.
Yeah. That's my goal. We as bass players don't get a chance to be featured that often, and I'm thinking like, all right, so I can create the option, so I can create when other bass players, other slap bass players can like tell their stories, tell their life stories, and then hopefully, as you said, the future is unwritten, so hopefully there'll be way more things to say in the future. But so far, I asked you like pretty much everything that I wanted to ask you, what I was planning to ask you, and even more. Is there anything that I might have missed that you wanted to talk about or like mention during the slap stream?
No, I'm sure as soon as we stop, I'll forget people who I should have mentioned. Yeah, again, just all the props to the bass players that I've already mentioned that have been so influential to me and provided me with so much joy. It's a great tradition. And like I said, criminally underrated. Slap bass, come on, get with the program. It's like logically clear that slap bass is awesome.
I completely agree with that.
So, yeah, this. I'm just really honored to be a part of this, Djordje, and you know, I think I was very quickly overwhelmed with the amount of content you're putting out. I started being like, okay, let's just watch one per week, you know, and I was like, God damn, Mark Rubin's got a 4-hour thing and I can't miss half an hour of it. Like, let's watch the whole thing, you know. But so really it quickly became apparent that it's just going to be a document that hopefully will live forever of this whole living slap-based tradition. So
that was my goal, you know, when I was inspired a little bit by when I was going to New Orleans and then listening to those recordings of interviews from, you know, jazz guys at Tulane University, at Jazz Archives. And like you just listening to like all those, like Steve Brown talk for 6 or 7 hours. And it's, I was thinking like, you know, I have to give props to nowadays bass players. We all gonna die one day, you know, so, you know, I have to do it. Nobody else is gonna do it. so I you know, it was like kind of like my task, my obligation. I'm really glad that you enjoyed it. Thanks a lot for being a part of the Slapstream. And my final question is, after all these years of playing and touring and recording and doing everything around music, what inspired you to still do what you do? Play, tour, same thing over and over with new people, and you still find passion and time and you're making it happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the material, you know, this roots music is really what it comes down to. You know, different types of folk music, ultimately, music of the people that's been created and distilled over time into these wonderful, different connected forms. Definitely connected, all throughout the world, connected. Deeply inspiring thing to be a part of, and you know, being fortunate enough to play with amazing musicians who inspire and who I don't want to let down. And then, you know, the people in the audience. We can use all the joy in the world that we can get, you know. So I have the opportunity and responsibility, I feel like, to share all that I can.
That's great, and that's how I feel about it too. Thanks a lot, Zach, for being a part of the Slapstream number 77. And I wish you all the best, and I can't wait to see you in person and to hear you play with Hot Club of Cowtown or any other bands or future bands that you're going to play with.
Thank you, Djordje, and you should be episode 100.
All right, I'll think about it. You know, Kim Neckerman suggested that he should interview me, like, for, you know, so I might take up his offer. It'll be fun.
That's part of the story. It wouldn't be complete without it.
Oh, thanks, man. All right, thanks a lot. Good luck with everything, and can't wait to see you in person.
Thanks, bud. See ya.
See ya. All right, that was Slapstream with Djordje, number 77. Man, 77. That's lots of episodes. As I mentioned, like, my goal is to go to 100, but who knows? I might go a little less, a little more, but we are getting there. You know, I'm sure then there will be Saturdays when I'm not going to be able to do it, but I'm doing my best. These days I mostly pre-record. So please tell me if you'd like me to feature someone. Please write it down in the comments under these videos. I would love to. I'm listening. I'm writing down, like, you know, stuff that you say, or you can also send an email to contact@artofslapbass.com. So that's another way to uh, to um, to tell me who you would like to see, and if you have anything that you would like me to add. Like, so sorry, I'm like doing 5 things at a time. All right, so this is how this thing works at the bottom. Okay, I figured out I should like tell you all these things at the end. So click that subscribe button. Make sure to slap that like button. Make sure to share these videos. These are all amazing people, amazing bass players. They deserve more media recognition. And since media doesn't care for us, I had to do this. So tell your friends, tell your bass friends about them because they deserve to be heard. Speaking of that, make sure to follow my guest, ZACK SAPUNOR. He's all his links, social media links, handles are in the description of this video. Make sure to follow me if you're not following me. And the most important, follow Art of Slap Bass. Spread the word about the Art of Slap Bass. There's a few, if you feel so inclined, like to support my work, to support Slap Bass world, make sure to check out Venmo and PayPal links in the description of this video, as well as Patreon. Patreon is probably the best way to support my work and my intention to promote slap bass and present it to the world. Another great way is to buy one of these Art of Slap Bass t-shirts. Today I'm wearing the red one. I also have a black one, and there's also a couple other designs that I love and I think that are great. And thanks to the designers that did that. If you have any other suggestions, if you know a way how you can maybe help me out with this, reach out. And I already have like a few great people that have been helping me out. It started with Fernando from Barcelona. Huge shout out to him. He created these flyers, and then Ryan took over. Now I have Nikki Lugoshi from Argentina helping out with those, sometimes with videos. Luca Chiapara, he's helping out with videos and some teasers as well. So thanks a lot to those folks, and special thanks to everyone that subscribed to my Patreon. If you haven't done that, join all the other slap bass players they've been doing that for a while now. And in the meantime, this was 77th episode. The goal is to reach out to 100. And don't forget, never fret. Slide it in smooth and keep it in a groove. I'm Djordje Stijepovic, and I will do my best to see you next Saturday.